Good Wednesday morning. This is the Great Basin Fire Potential Briefing. We start off looking at our potential impacts through the week, and our main issues will be in the longer term. This weekend, Saturday on through Monday, we'll be looking at increasing winds following some very dry conditions across parts of western Nevada and again across eastern Nevada and into parts of western Utah. And not on the map, but also mentioned here in the text, is that towards the end of the period we could see some thunderstorms with a mix of wet and dry lightning perhaps returning to Utah, especially eastern areas, as well as the Arizona Strip by early next week. More current conditions the last 24 hours precipitation-wise, just a bit of a scattering through here in Nevada, otherwise mostly dry except up in central Idaho. Another wave moved through on the right-hand side. You can see the lightning that occurred up there, and most of that occurred with rain and on fuels that are already quite wet, so no immediate concerns in those areas. Our Great Basin fire activity, Great Basin outlined in this light brown. You can see that new starts are the circles in the red, existing fires are those in the yellow. Observed precipitation going out a bit on the left-hand side over the past 7 days. Two-thirds of the region across the south is bone dry. We did have significant precipitation, though, up in Idaho, especially central areas where that light green shade is anywhere from a half inch to an inch of rain. Areas in yellow are areas that received over an inch and a half of rain. And over the past 30 days, we see that precipitation up in Idaho. We do see what was the remnants of an early monsoonal surge down across southern areas. However, that has since dissipated significantly. And if we look at our fuels, you can see on the ERC conditions, our ERCs across southern and eastern areas are starting to get pretty dry in the 70th to 80th percentiles given by the orange and red circles. Up in Idaho, however, with the rain, many areas have dropped down below their 50th percentile. On the infrared satellite imagery with upper level maps, we see a broad west to east high pressure ridge not being allowed to push further to the north, so the clockwise circulation is keeping a lot of the subtropical monsoonal moisture well down into Mexico, quite dry across our region. Showers and thunderstorms that were over Idaho have since moved eastwards, another low dropping down from the Pacific Northwest. So looking at our significant fire potential starting with today, no major concerns across the northern third of our region. However, we're drying out unusually so in our southern areas, which by now typically start getting monsooned out. If we look at weather conditions, relative humidity on the left, you can see single-digit humidity across a vast area of Nevada into southern and central Utah are in the low teens. Higher humidity values to the north. Winds overall on the right-hand side quite light, basically 5 to 15 miles per hour. A bit gustier across the Uintas and up into parts of Idaho. And then on Thursday, our fire potential hasn't changed too much, still green to the north, of that area is shrinking. On the left-hand side, you see drier air by these tannish colors starting to push on in, so we'll see drying. We'll also be watching this low-pressure area drop down out of British Columbia, and as it does so, it'll increase the winds across the Pacific Northwest and into the western portion of the Great Basin as we go into this upcoming weekend. Weather conditions on Thursday, again, single-digit humidity on the left like the other day. Starting to dry out a bit, more oranges and reds popping up into parts of Idaho where humidity levels will drop down to the teens to 20 percentages. And then going into the winds, we're looking at, again, fairly light winds across Nevada, moderately gusty in the dark green, 15 to 25 miles per hour, but nothing really out of the ordinary. On Friday, there's that low pressure dropping a bit further south, more dry air pushing in, especially across western areas. Our PSAs are still fairly dry. And then on Friday, single-digit humidity once again, lower humidity across parts of Idaho. But now we're starting to see a bit more wind on the right-hand side. The dark green to orange shades are winds anywhere from 20 to 30 miles per hour, locally higher in the lee of the Sierra, and it'll be increasing even more as we go into the weekend. 3-day precipitation, we're looking at basically dry conditions. There's some leftover scattered showers moving out of Idaho. Otherwise, the main theme will be dry. Now, as we go into Saturday, notice as this trough moves, drops down lower, we see dry air punching in. We also have high risk for winds downsloping off the lee of the Sierra and also coming in across the Arizona Strip and far southwestern portions of Utah. On Sunday, wind concerns increase. That's because on the left-hand side, this low starts strengthening. You see these yellow lines a bit tighter, closer together, more drier air pushing in on southwest flow. That'll favor these areas for a high-risk combination of low humidity and winds. And then on Monday, high risk expands further across the area. That low pressure system sits on in. This is a perfect scenario for gusty winds, especially across Nevada and parts of western Utah. And then by the time we get into Tuesday, again, not much change. Still that trough through there, but now we're noticing a bit more return of some monsoonal moisture for the first time in several weeks, starting to creep on into our southern and southeastern areas. And the concern here is that the upper level steering flow is pretty strong here. So these are not going to be your typical soggy, stationary monsoonal thunderstorms. They'll have movement. If it's raining, it won't be raining for long in one particular spot. And with the prolonged drying that we've had, there is definite concern from day 7 beyond for some significant weather issues concerning lightning. Precipitation, our 7-day totals, again, pretty dry for the most part, but in the southeastern Utah, this will be towards day 7, starting to creep on in, although the really, really wet monsoon areas are still down into Mexico. Looking at our extended outlook for days 8 to 14, July 20th to the 26th, you can see that we're warmer than normal in most areas. Still a cooler signal through here signifying low pressure's presence, and that'll keep the monsoon pinned down into Arizona, maybe into our far southern areas, but much of the region continues to dry out. This concludes our briefing. Have a great day.